sell species?
No.
No? You got Zins by chance?
No, brother. These days we solve problems, you know. No, yeah, you know, we do, you know, like this stuff, you know, like we, you know, like, so these days like solve problems, you know, we try to survive, you know.
We're doing inspection. What's up, boss?
Hey, brother, hi, bro.
We're gonna do a clear inspection.
What is it?
We're gonna do inspection.
Okay.
So you have some license. You have like anybody else in the
Oh yeah, for me the.
Just you?
Yeah, just right now I'm listening.
Alright, we're gonna come on the back, okay?
You open the door? Oh, can I see like court order or something?
We don't need for
Sure.
Yeah, I know, that's the problem, you know.
I'll tell you right now, we need for open door, please.
So, you know, like, we need something court order, but you know.
You don't need for open the door.
We're gonna say it one more time. I'm gonna have to
Yeah, I'm not.
No, let's not come down. You have to obey the sheriff. They're telling you here for inspection. If you refuse the inspection, you're gonna get arrested for OGA. I'm gonna ask you one more time to open the door nicely.
Okay, so first thing I got my.
No, you're not going to open the door. No, you're not open.
No,
We're not doing that. We're not doing that.
this is the fucking direction.
Get out. He goes to jail for that.
Bro, come on, brother. Why do you like this? I don't know.
Don't be fucking stupid.
Bro, I
Don't be fucking stupid.
Bro, I don't do nothing.
Open the door, that's it. Yeah, and we called it multiple times. We said, open the shut the fuck up, open the door. And you don't want to listen.
Outstanding.
I know, but it's not. I'm doing nothing wrong, bro.
Okay, so open the door.
Yeah, but you know, I'm trying to be open, but you not. You
When I'm not telling you to do something, you do it. That's it.
I know, but
what? Please,
The numbers don't lie. We seized over $41 million in illegal products and issued over $65 million in penalties. And just this month, we are seeing some of the impact of taking action. We've taken a combined $8 million of illegal products off our city streets just this month. This is a big deal. Because it's not only the dollars amount attached to these products, but it's the dangers that these products can do to our communities.
I'm Sal Greco, and you're watching and listening to a Halloween edition of the Sal Greco Show. Now, I would come to you wearing a costume since it's Halloween, but I don't work for the upper echelon of the New York City Police Department because those guys wear costumes more than anyone visiting the store Spirit. So with that being said, we got one issue in particular that I'm going to harp on today. You saw the opening video to the show. And that's going to be this Operation Padlock. And it was deemed unconstitutional by the courts. Of course, the Eric Adams administration in New York City. I mean, God, why is this guy still the mayor after, what's going on there in New York City? But I mean, he appeals everything. He goes to court. He challenges everyone. I mean, the guy is just he irritates the hell out of everyone and gets underneath everyone's skin. Here is another case where they're guilty. They've been deemed two different blows in the same court over the same circumstances in the last year, but he's going to fight it. He's going to waste more taxpayer dollars because that's what Eric Adams and his administration do best. So I'm going to show you and read these articles from the New York Post. And it was in regards to Sheriff Anthony Miranda, who was a very, very well-known frequenter of Conso Frito in the Bronx. And, he's under a mire of investigations himself. And let's just show you the articles, and let me read them off for you. Law allowing NYC to padlock hundreds of suspected illegal pot shops ruled unconstitutional by judge and bombshell ruling. Law allowing NYC to padlock hundreds of suspected illegal pot shops ruled unconstitutional by judge and bombshell ruling. It's by Peter Senzamichi from the New York Post. A state law that has allowed New York City to padlock hundreds of suspected illegal cannabis shops is unconstitutional, a Queens judge said in a bombshell ruling Tuesday. Judge Kevin J. Kerrigan ruled that the mandate, which grants the city sheriff's office authority to keep illicit cannabis sellers shuttered after they've been raided, violates the store owner's rights to due process. The sheriff's adjudicative power, which leaves store owners helpless regardless of evidence in administrative court rulings as examined in a recent Post expose, stands against the cornerstone of American democracy and procedural due process, Kerrigan wrote. The city has used the provision to back its enforcement push. Mayor Eric Adams vaunted Operation Padlock to Protect, which officials say has resulted in more than 1,200 shops being shuttered. Shop owners are able to appeal their closures in administrative courts, but under the law, the sheriff has the final call to determine which raided stores can stay open and which must remain closed for up to a year. Quote, summarily shuttering a business for 1 year, despite the fact that it was exonerated from allegations of illegal activity, stands against the cornerstone of American democracy and procedural due process, end quote, the decision reads. As administration spokesperson Liz Garcia said the city was examining the ruling and had filed an appeal Tuesday afternoon. Quote, this decision validates what we have been arguing since this statute was enacted. Mayor Adams, the city council, and the sheriff have violated the due process rights of every store owner that has been shut down by the New York City Sheriff's Office, end quote, said attorney Lance Lazaro. Lazaro, who represents Cloud Corner, a Queens shop shut down on allegations of selling weed without a license last month, predicted the ruling, which calls for his client's store to reopen, could allow others targeted in Operation Padlock to sue for, quote, astronomical damages, end quote. Quote, the city of New York should be ashamed for allowing this process to happen in the first place, end quote, Lazaro said. Quote, how could Mayor Adams feel if his due process rights were violated in his pending criminal matter, end quote. The Post reported on Sunday that in roughly 30% of cases, the sheriff's office had made a final determination overruling recommendations from the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings, OATH, that accused stores to be allowed to remain open or to reopen. A number of those stores were ruled to not even contain any cannabis in the store at all, while others were ordered to reopen because sheriff's deputies had either improperly conducted their inspections or they had failed to properly service summonses, according to hundreds of pages of oath hearings examined by the Post. The store at the heart of Kerrigan's ruling, Cloud Corner, incorporated as ASA 456 Corp., admitted to containing cannabis, but successfully argued at their oath hearing and now in Queens Supreme Court that the sheriff's raid was conducted outside of business hours and therefore the inspection could not have concluded that pot was being offered for sale. Oath dismissed both the summons and the order shuttering the store, but the sheriff issued a final decision that the shop should be closed for up to a year, citing its listed hours of operation on Google Maps and claiming they discovered dozens of pounds of illicit cannabis product. The store owner said that information is automatically generated and was not accurate to the shop's actual hours, and Kerrigan's, the judge, agreed that the sheriff had failed to find that the shop was actively selling cannabis. The sheriff's order for the store to remain shuttered could only be characterized as arbitrary and capricious, the judge wrote. Quote, if the final arbiter has the authority to confer no weight to the hearing, there is no real meaningful opportunity to be heard, end quote, reads the decision. Quote, which vastly increases the risk of erroneous deprivation and raises a due process concern, end quote. Last summer, the same Queens judge ruled in favor of another case brought by Lazaro, arguing that a sealing order must be dismissed if Oath rejected the underlying summons in a cannabis raid. That case is also being appealed by the city's legal department. The Tuesday decision is contrary to an initial ruling by a federal judge in a class action suit filed by Lazaro, where the judge claimed there is enough due process and the risk of, quote, erroneous deprivation, end quote, was low. NYC sheriff forces shops to shutter despite court finding no illegal weed sold. How will I feed my family? This is by Peter Senzamichi. of the New York Post. Scores of city bodegas and tobacco shops targeted in pot raids have been ordered to remain closed for a year, despite not even selling cannabis, according to court hearings, records, and industry players. The nonsensical move is the result of a small provision in the state law that kicked off Operation Padlock to Protect, which aims to close illegal pot shops, and also granted the city sheriff the final call to determine which raided stores can stay open and which must remain closed for up to a year. Some of the raids, shops' lawyers call the measure, quote, authoritarian, end quote, and say it makes Sheriff Anthony Miranda, already mired in scandals and investigations, an unelected, quote, de facto judge, end quote, because he can arbitrarily overrule a city administrative court. What's the point of us going to these hearings, said lawyer Nadia Kanuith, who has represented 10 targeted stores at administrative court hearings where her clients won recommendations to reopen only to have decisions overruled by the sheriff. A Brooklyn tobacco store on Fulton Street was ordered to remain padlocked for up to a year, despite an administrative court hearing determining that the store was not selling cannabis at all. Quote, a few days or a month we could manage, end quote, said Abdul Al-Saidi, who has owned the Bed-Stuy store for a decade and a half. Quote, but a year? End quote. The loss of his small business may force him to go on welfare, he told the Post. Quote, how will I feed my family? End quote, Al-Saidi said. Even big boosters of Operation Padlock to Protect agree that this part of the law gives the sheriff far too much discretion and power. Quote, I think that state law has to be changed, end quote, said City Council member Gail Brewer, Democrat from Manhattan, who has been rooting out illicit smoke shops and almost personal crusade. While largely supportive of the popular effort, she has tracked the rollout of Operation Padlock closely as the chair of the council's oversight committee and has previously asked for better data reporting from the sheriff's office and the city's Department of Finance. Quote, this has to change in terms of the sheriff having the final say, end quote, Brewer told the Post. Quote, there's definitely plenty of stores to close that are legitimately illicit. I don't know why you have to close ones that are not, end quote. According to city records, the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings, OATH, which typically adjudicates fines and penalties issued by city agencies, issued recommendations to reopen 229 of the 799 shops that had hearings in front of OATH as early as October. But the sheriff refused to allow the reopening of roughly 75 of the 229 that had been cleared, instead requiring them to remain closed for up to a year. State officials did not respond to repeated Post requests for comment. A city hall rep replied to related questions from the Post only by saying that more than 1,200 shops have been shuttered and over $82 million in illicit products have been seized since the operation began in the spring. Quote, we will continue to exercise the authority given to us by the state to help keep our community safe and create an environment where legal cannabis operators can thrive, end quote, said Deputy Press Secretary Liz Garcia in a statement. Both hearings that dismissed the sheriff's orders closing shops cite a range of factors: technical deficiencies, no evidence of sale of cannabis at a store, no cannabis found at a store, or that a store had indeed complied with a prior cease and desist notice and got rid of their black market weed. In some cases, the raids did turn up cannabis, but often the amounts were so minor that they failed to meet a, quote, de minimis, end quote, requirement set in state law, which is not expressively defined, critics say. Other times, the sheriff offered odd evidence, such as a few joints found inside a backpack of a worker or extraordinarily in the pockets of a customer in the wrong place at the wrong time. Regardless, many of these stores were ordered to remain closed by the sheriff. Miranda, whose office was recently raided and is under investigation for improperly seized cash and for possible shakedown schemes, was given these powers by the same state law which paved the way for the vaunted Operation Padlock to Protect. The law, sponsored by strong Adams ally and candidate for city comptroller, State Assemblywoman Jennifer Rajkumar, gives the sheriff final discretion on whether raided stores can reopen with no burden of proof required. Rajkumar told the Post that the sheriff's padlocking powers were needed because slapping just fines on rogue shops was an exercise in futility. But she also noted that she is open to improving the law. She's open to improving the law. Lawyer Lance Lazaro, who filed a federal class action lawsuit challenging the law and represents the Fulton Street tobacco store, said, quote, "It's like we're living in an authoritarian state." Kanoth said, quote, "There is no due process then, right?" End quote. Quote, "It defeats the purpose of us as attorneys presenting any viable defense." End quote, Kanoth said of the sheriff's powers. Quote, "What you're looking at doing here is major. You're not slapping someone with a civil penalty. At worst, it's unconstitutional." End quote. Last summer, Lazaro won a state court case, which was immediately appealed, that could also undo many of the Operation Padlock closures. According to the oath hearing notes, the evidence for padlocking Al Saidi's Fulton Street store was that a weed dealer entered the shop and conducted an illicit cannabis deal inside with a 20-year-old undercover officer, leading the sheriff to claim that the store sold weed to a minor. Ironically, Al Saidi had long complained about dealers on his store's block before the raid, the hearing notes. The only cannabis found in the store was on the dealer, according to the hearing. 6 days later, Miranda wrote a pro forma letter rejecting the court's order and issuing a final decision to keep the store closed for 1 year. On Friday, Lazaro filed papers against the city to reopen Al Saidi's shop. In the Bronx, a store owner told the Post that his Lydig Avenue store had been raided on a few occasions during Operation Padlock, with the sheriff leaving empty-handed each time. The shop's former owner had previously sold illegal cannabis. But when the new owner, Adam, who didn't want his last name in the paper due to fear of retribution, took over the lease in the spring, he removed all the cannabis, tobacco, and vape products while awaiting a legal cannabis license from the state, yet still suffered through a string of raids. But a raid in early August was different, starting with 10 officers who burst into the store with guns drawn, Adams said. About 10 minutes into the raid, a smaller group of officers marched in a local drug dealer who sells weed on the same block as the store. In an effort similar to Al Saidi's store, the shop owner said. The store was immediately padlocked, putting him and his 4 employees out of work. At his oath hearing, Adam and his lawyer, Kanoth, even found the dope dealer who, according to the hearing officer, quote, credibly testified and established that he is the neighborhood cannabis dealer, end quote, and determined that the store was not selling cannabis, recommending its immediate reopening. The sheriff disagreed and ordered the store to remain closed for a year. Quote, I lost the whole store, a good business that didn't have anything, end quote, Adam told the Post. Quote, absolutely zero thing illegal inside the store. No vapes, no tobacco, nothing, absolutely zero, end quote. Adam used to have 3 convenience stores, but thanks to Operation Padlock, now he has none. His other 2 were also shuttered in raids, but while they were allowed to reopen after their oath hearings in the convenience industry, customers can quickly develop new routines that don't include your even temporarily padlocked storefront. Quote, I opened back up for a month and that's it. My business was making nothing, end quote, he said. Quote, I was paying rent out of my pocket, end quote. Quote, I'm never going to touch convenience stores ever because now it's a target, end quote, he said. Quote, you open a convenience store, you're a target for the sheriffs. They'll just come and hit me any day, end quote.
Well, what can we say about Anthony Miranda? I mean, Operation Padlock should be Operation Being Padlocked. From his fellow Consofrito alumni, Jennifer Rajkumar, allowing this to go through the state assembly and then the Senate, and then it becomes legislation. It's just a joke. Anthony Miranda should be out of there as the sheriff already. And whatever's going on here needs to stop forthwith. This is unconstitutional and a disgrace.
So here's a post from John McCarry, NYPD Deputy Commissioner of Operations Kaz Daughtry at NYPD Daughtry doesn't even think the rank and file of NYPD know what's going on with the corruption investigation. Hashtag the finest unfiltered. Well, let's just take a listen to what, I don't know, this Manchild has to say.
I should add to that, John, that, I lead a lot of these operations throughout the city, and I get to speak to the officers every single day when I'm out there. Out there last night, the night before, going out there again. And to them, it's business as usual. I don't even think that they even know, like, really what's going on, and as far as these the corruption investigations and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, we still have a job to do. We got to do what's best for New Yorkers and what's best for the agency.
All right, so you understand what you just heard? He thinks the cops don't know anything and don't care about what's going on with the corruption investigations. Actually, Manchild, they do care. And you know why they care? Because it affects everything in the police department. That guy that's sitting next to you, that empty suit who calls himself the police commissioner, he's under a federal investigation. He doesn't have access to sensitive information as the head of the police department. Then there's yourself. How many phones have they taken from you, Kaz Dordry? I don't know. You tell us. John Schell, who's also rumored to be having his stuff looked at, or whatever it is that he's been doing in the background. And then you have Tariq Shepard. 1 minute, he's the deputy commissioner of public information. Then he's also the acting chief of staff. So how are you a uniform member of service and a civilian member of service? This is exactly how Kaz Dordry, who should be under investigation immediately because he was making overtime apparently as a civilian rank as the deputy commissioner of operations, yet he made more than even the police commissioner did last year. None of this makes sense, but with the upper echelon in the NYPD currently, it never does. The cops very much do care, Kaz, because they don't know coming to work if the guy or girl who calls themselves their commanding officer or executive officer will even be there. These investigations matter. So with that being said, if you like what you saw, if you like what you heard, if you're on YouTube, please click that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button. On Rumble, hit the Rumble button, hit the follow button. And if you're listening on any major platform that carries podcasts and streaming, hit the like button. Also follow it over there if you choose to and you want to just listen to the show. But I'm going to end the show with my interview that I did on WABC radio about 10 days ago or so, or about a week ago, with Roger Stone on the Roger Stone Show on WABC radio. So you can now listen to that. And happy Halloween. And I'll see you on the next one. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night.
Welcome back to the Stone Show. We're now going to be joined by veteran New York City Police Department officer, Salvatore Greco, a man who served the people of New York as a police officer for 14 years, without an unblemished record of service to the people, sometimes serving in some of the dangerous neighborhoods in New York for the graveyard shift. A man terminated for political reasons by the New York City Police Department, who's currently contesting that termination in court, where the judge has now twice dismissed motions to dismiss his lawsuit. But he has been a keen observer of the Adams administration. He agrees with me that the notion that Eric Adams is being prosecuted because he is a critic of Joe Biden's open borders policy, which President Trump actually joked about at the Al Smith dinner, is really not the truth. The truth is that Eric Adams ran for mayor as an advocate for the city being a sanctuary city. It is the policy, he said, of the city and the state that we accept illegal immigrants here with open arms. He is now faced with that calamity where they are jamming illegals into luxury hotels. The old Roosevelt Hotel, which is a national landmark, was once the political headquarters of Governor Tom Dewey, Mayor John Lindsay, and Governor Nelson Rockefeller, now a crime center, is also the Adams administration that has been putting these illegal shelters into some of the most stable but working class neighborhoods. In some cases, in Staten Island, even putting a illegal shelter, which had no running water, next to a Catholic girls' school. These are the policies of Eric Adams, who tells us crime is going down because they cook the statistics. Now, Salvatore Greco began predicting some months ago that there would be a rash of crimes and criminal indictments in this administration. Many scoffed at him. He pinpointed a restaurant in the Bronx called Con Sofrito, which he insisted was the headquarters of this Adams crime syndicate. Many dismissed him, but everything he has said has been borne out by criminal indictments and major news outlets. So, Salvatore Greco, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Thank you, Roger. It's an honor to be on WABC Radio once again. I hope everybody's having a great weekend.
All right. So let's get to the question of the Adams administration. Anyone who has read this indictment understands that this notion that he took some upgrades on Turkish Airlines, or he maybe got an extra Bloody Mary, as I think it was Kat Timpf said on Gutfeld, hasn't read this. Basically, Eric Adams not only took $10 million into his campaign from Turkish interests, which is illegal. He then used straw donors to submit those donations through the city's campaign finance matching funds money, matching it with taxpayer supplies dollars. So he's defrauded the taxpayers. But additionally, it appears he took a $100,000 bribe in return for honoring an Islamic terrorist. Tell us about this.
That's right, Roger. So it was reported just the other day by Paul Sperry on X. I actually reposted it myself on X and on Instagram, and he's right here. It says, New York City Mayor Eric Adams let himself be bribed with $100K by the Muslim Brotherhood leader Recep Erdogan, which is, I believe, the son of the Turkish president, into erecting a monument to Islam, influencing Manhattan skyline with a Turkish consulate tower with curving facade inspired by Islamic crescent and featuring a mosque inside. That's from his sources. And Paul Sperry, been a reporter, I believe he reports for the Real Clear Investigations or Real Clear Politics.
Also
and
for the New York Post as well, yes.
Oh, yes, for the New York Post. So he's been pretty accurate, whatever he puts out. He comments on many different politicians and also things involving Trump land. So with that being said, how can anybody think that anybody who's either Republican or Democrat is going to condone any action Eric Adams has taken for himself, which is basically he's involved with multiple countries here, Roger. This Turkey thing is just the Southern District of New York. And this allegation, Roger, shouldn't surprise anybody because, as we know, I've stated this numerous times, Eric Adams was a New York City police officer when first he was a sergeant and then as a lieutenant, was a bodyguard for convicted felon Mike Tyson, convicted criminal Al Sharpton, and of course, Reverend Louis Farrakhan, who himself is a radical. Anyone who says that Eric Adams supports all these different people, he sounds like Louis Farrakhan. So this Muslim Brotherhood that he's ordering up to, which are no friends of this country, Roger, should be alarming to tell you that Eric will do anything as long as it benefits Eric Adams. So with this being said, I don't understand when people get in this logic that they think this is a political hit job. He's taking money from this Muslim Brotherhood, and he took money from Turkey. And also you're going to be hearing about also from sources that we're hearing, and the New York Post reported this, and the Daily News has been reporting that the Eastern District of New York has their own indictments coming up, and that's involving China and its Chinese connection through Winnie Greco, one of his aides. So with Turkey here, Roger, and China, this has nothing to do with this political angle. People want to say he was pro illegal immigration. Roger, he campaigned that New York City was a sanctuary city. He stated as the mayor that New York City must remain, the official policy of New York City that the borders must remain open. And may I remind people, and I hope President Trump is listening, when President Trump was going through his trial in New York City, the day that they were going to announce his verdict, Eric Adams at his press conference said this is a children's time where the feds are also investigating Rikers Island. They've been doing that for many years, and they were looking into how it's being run. But he so happened to say he's going to keep it open just for President Trump. So, I mean, what can I say? To me, Roger, in my opinion, Eric Adams is a charlatan, and everything he's going through is self-inflicted. And it's really sad because he's a highly conflicted individual who loves to surround himself with corruptible people.
Sal, we got to go to a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with NYPD veteran Sal Greco, who also has his own Sal Greco show, which you can see on every popular internet platform. We'll be right back. And we're back on the Roger Stone Show talking to New York City police veteran Sal Greco, also the featured player in the Sal Greco show, available on many of the common podcast and internet outlets. So, Sal, the mayor insists that crime in New York City is going down. The Joe Biden claimed the same thing in the debate. The FBI record numbers that were published were immediately disputed as cooked. It appears to me that the numbers that the city has put out are equally cooked. As a veteran police officer who knows many other police officers and is a shrewd analyst of these numbers, tell us what's going on.
Well, this is even better. It's better explained by my friend Sam Antar from whitecollarfraud.com, and he's former CEO of Crazy Eddie's, and he's a numbers guy. And he keeps referring me to these numbers being cooked. And how do we know this? Well, they underreport crimes by, suppose you were, punched in the face and they took your phone from you. That's technically a robbery. But what they'll do is mention that as an assault, and they'll say it's an assault 3, which is a misdemeanor, which, by the way, the misdemeanor crimes are through the roof in New York City. So as a misdemeanor, it does not go down as one of the 7 major felonies, and they'll just say that the felonies are down. So what they'll do is they cook the books. Later on, they can course correct after they give those numbers to the FBI by the end of the year. They will correct them within the next 4 months, it's around March or April. And then all of a sudden you see that the felonies were about 100, 200, 300 more than the original reported because they underreported it to not alert that the crime was going up, because this seems to be the norm under Eric Adams' administration. So that's how you cook the book, so to speak. And Sam Antar is a legend with this, and he's actually every week exposing these numbers. So you check him out on whitecollarfraud.com or at Sam Antar on X, and it's really mind-boggling, Roger, how nobody has stepped in to say, hey, what's going on with these numbers, and why is it every year it's the same thing, where it's underreported and then misclassified, and then all of a sudden, 5 months later in the new year, oh, these are real numbers from last year.
You have seen, as I have, the speculation that State Attorney General Tish James, who actually applauded the president, which showed a little bit of class at the Al Smith dinner, is contemplating a race for mayor in the event that Mayor Eric Adams cannot survive. Now, Mayor Adams says he's not going anywhere, but he doesn't really have the final say in that matter. The governor could remove him. The city council, I believe, can remove him. There is if indeed there's another round of indictments, as is speculated, his political position becomes more and more I think vulnerable. But I have seen substantial evidence that Tish James was among those who engaged in these activities on Act Blue, in which she took in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of suspect small contributions from donors through their credit cards. After Act Blue turns off the feature in which you have to test the donor's name and address to make sure they match the credit card. And then when you go to those donors, a woman, for example, in Nevada who the records show gave to Tish James' campaign several times, she insists that she did not give that money. Sometimes people of very, very modest means have given astronomical sums of money to Democrat candidates, including Tish James and others, that is well beyond their means. One woman in Nevada, surviving on Social Security and disability, taking in $30,000 a year, has given $840,000. Not credible. Do you really think that that the Attorney General has real legal or political liability on these issues? The whole straw donor issue?
Yes, well, if we actually go back to her history, she was a city councilwoman, and she started in Brooklyn, and she is very chummy with the Bronx Democrat Party and the Democrat Party apparatus in New York State, which is essentially run by Carl Hastie, the Assembly Speaker of New York State. And just recently, Roger, at NYFocus.com, they said that $400,000 was disappeared. It doesn't exist under these campaign finance forms. Yet they happen to now amend it the other day, as reported by Jeff Coleman. I immediately said, well, they threw numerous fundraisers at Ponce Puerto, which we just mentioned, which was the now shuttered place, and the owner was the police commissioner's brother, where we know that they were operating illegally. You had these human trafficking allegations, which I have. I have the official document that proves that there is an allegation of this. There's a criminal referral for this. And also other numerous crimes. They were operating illegally. The shed was a public safety hazard, deemed a public safety hazard. It's all reported in the city, New York Daily News, New York Post. You could all check it out. Just put it up on my show, the Sal Greco Show. And Roger, she's standing there smiling with Jimmy Rodriguez, the self-admitted criminal mob associate manager of this place and former owner of the Jimmy's Bronx Cafe. He himself who has a checkered past. And how is she allowed to be involved in this place, where now we're hearing that there's fundraisers, which I posted on my own X, that are not being reported? So there's, what is that called? Money laundering, Roger? So there's more allegations that we even missed in regards to the Bronx Democrat Party, who Letitia James' face is always at concert for. It was always there. It was numerous parties. So I think that she should be questioned or sanctioned for associations with a mob associate and Jimmy Rodriguez, and or whatever activities were occurring in this place or other places where there's money missing, Roger. She's the Attorney General. What is she doing involved with these people and these actions? I demand an investigation of Tish James, Carl Hastie, and all these New York State politicians or city politicians that had fundraisers, and there's no record of their fundraising on any campaign finance form, Roger. You know these things. If this was Donald Trump, Roger, what would be the outcome?
Oh, well, they'd already be indicted. Look, we stress again that these are allegations, and until a court rules on them, they are just that. But where there is smoke, there's fire, and the evidence is not only exists, but it has been widely reported by the New York Post, the New York Daily News, several other prestigious and reputable websites that cover New York State politics.